We ain't called you yet. Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Stephen Klein from Lake Country Christian Church in Fort Worth. Thank you for coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father God, we thank you for an awesome day. God, I pray that you would bless everyone in here. God, I pray that you would help everyone communicate clearly what they're trying to speak about. So God, I pray that you would bring your wisdom and your grace and your mercy. And we give you all the glory and all the honor. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Stephen, for being here today. Appreciate it. Mr. Manius.
Your Honor, we do not have any agenda announcements at this time.
Thank you. Even better. Court members, you have before you the minutes. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Fickus, you just all over the board here. You want to?
Man, what have I got?
You got that one. Well, there you go.
Did Mayor's Council meet the other day? They push all these buttons.
Motion passes unanimously. We have three proclamations that to take care of today. The first one is for DeMolay Month, and we have Colton Crawford, who is the Master Counselor of the H. Malvern Marks chapter of the Order of DeMolay. I'm going to ask Colton to come up. This was one that is very special to me. DeMolay meant an awful lot to me as I was growing up, and Colton and I were just talking about that. In fact, Colton's grandfather and I were in DeMolay at the same time together and competed in many different competitions with our chapter and their chapter. At that time, it was Fort Worth chapter. H. Malvern Marks was the executive director that worked with the DeMolays in Texas for many years, and I was the state president when Dad Marks was still the executive officer. I know that there are a lot of organizations that mean an awful lot to folks as they're growing up. It could be DeMolay, it could be Boy Scouts, JCs, ROTC, all of which Colton is a part of, so he's a very busy individual. But DeMolay was something that I got active in, and it as a result of that, my brother-in-law was a state master counselor before me. I was state master counselor, then my partner, Jim Penn, in the accounting firm, was a past state master counselor. I met my wife through DeMolay. So I have to look back at a lot of what had occurred in my life and can point to the influences that DeMolay had on me throughout that process. I wish that every youth had an opportunity to be involved in an organization of some sort that really gives them an opportunity to not only improve themselves, but also gives them the opportunity to understand what it is to serve others and to help others and to work as a team. For that, Colton, I'm very glad that you're here today, and I'm going to read that proclamation into the record, and then I'll come down and make that presentation to you. Whereas DeMolay is a character-building organization of young men from ages 12 to 21, and whereas these young men are seeking to prepare themselves to become better citizens and leaders for tomorrow, and whereas DeMolay helps develop those traits of character which have strengthened good men in all ages, and whereas the organization has carried out the aforementioned goals for over 95 years through programs of athletic competition, social activity, civic service, fundraising, in charitable projects, and whereas the members of the H. Malvern Marks chapter have observed the year of 2015 as the 96th anniversary of DMLA, so as to exemplify to all citizens here and everywhere their many activities and to tender recognition to their millions of senior DMLAs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2015 as DMLA Month in Tarrant County. Be it further resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, recognize the young men of DMLA and their contributions to the welfare of our community. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 24th day of March 2015. I'll move its approval.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. I might add, as I'm coming down, I mentioned this to Colton, for over 40 years there's been a group of us that originally met every Friday for lunch, and then once a month. Rick Cox, former judge in our county court of law, Ken Curry, one of our district judges, Tom Myers, one of our former DAs, all were a part of this, and we've been doing this now for over 40 years. So it's a relationship that can continue, and I would encourage you as you get older to stay active in helping DMLA and in being a part of that. So again, let's get a picture and then we'll. Now, I told Colton he was welcome to say anything he wanted to say, so I'll kind of leave that to you and let you do whatever you like to this time.
I would just like to thank the court for allowing me this opportunity to come up here and accept this award for my youth group. Thank you.
Yes, Debbie, actually I always knew him as Rick. Brent, everybody else knew him as Brent. So he was one of the folks that was a part of this organization. Next, I believe, Commissioner Johnson, you have a proclamation.
I have a proclamation for Cesar Chavez Day. If you would read that into the record, please.
Oh, well, if I can. There it is. I can find it. Whereas Cesar Chavez came from the humble yet proud beginnings of a migrant worker to lead those same workers in a movement that irreversibly shaped our nation and brought justice and dignity to thousands. And whereas, inspired by the teachings of a Catholic priest and by the writings of Gandhi and other civic leaders, Cesar rose to become one of the great labor leaders of our time. And whereas Cesar's innate understanding of the problems facing migrant workers allowed him to organize thousands of farm workers across the nation into the United Farm Workers, and in his 3 decades of leadership, achieved real progress where others had failed. And whereas the strength of his vision and power of his leadership enabled him to take his struggle directly to the American people, focusing the nation's attention on the economic and social plight of the migrant farm workers, and in the process taught us how injustice anywhere affects us everywhere. And whereas Cesar Chavez Day Committee will celebrate the 15th anniversary of organizing the annual march and rally in downtown Fort Worth, continuing to promote the life and legacy of Cesar Chavez, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim March 31st, 2015 as Cesar Chavez Day in Tarrant County, and do hereby call upon the citizens of Tarrant County to reflect on and honor the life of this distinguished leader, veteran, and American, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 24th day of March 2015.
And I would move for its approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Now, not to embarrass me or this person or the court, I'm going to ask the president of the Cesar Chavez Committee to come forward to the mic. And if you would please introduce yourself to the court.
Alejandro.
Commissioner. My name is Alejandro Hucul Arias.
Now
Told you it
why I
was,
didn't
see,
pronounce his name.
they give me fits all the time about my pronunciation of names.
So see, you could
Welcome.
make fun of me today because he did quite well. present you with this proclamation and let you make any comments you'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to thank the Commissioners Court very much for the proclamation. There's also some people here in the building. We have some of our board members, Richard Gonzalez, Tony Ruiz are here. We wouldn't be able to do this.
Y'all stand up.
Without the help of our board and the community. Also, Belinda Hampton is here. She was very integral in making the Cesar Chavez Day a county holiday. So I would like to acknowledge them. And just thank you very much again for giving us this proclamation. It means a lot to us to have the community and the Commissioners Court's support.
Oh, well, thank you. Commissioner Johnson, I believe you have another proclamation.
I do, and when all of you hear about every year is the proclamation of Tarrant County Junior Livestock Show Days. So if you would read that into the record, please.
Whereas the Tarrant County Junior Livestock Show was first held in 1950. Did you participate in that? Is that one of those?
Well, I could have.
On Leonard's parking lot under Jacksboro Highway Bridge, and whereas today the Junior Livestock Show is sponsored by the Tarrant County Junior Livestock Association, an all-volunteer nonprofit organization whose membership is open to all persons interested in promoting and sponsoring the event and its related activities. And whereas the 65th Annual Tarrant County Junior Livestock Show will be held March 26th, 27th, and 28th in the Will Rogers Memorial Center Swine Barn. And whereas the Junior Livestock Show provides a showcase for 4-H and FFA youth participants to exhibit their livestock projects, such as cattle, goats, horses, lambs, poultry, rabbits, sheep, and swine, and youth fair projects such as horticultural baked goods, leather, crafting, welding, photography, sewing, and creative arts. And whereas the Junior Livestock Show and the youth fair provides a positive learning experience for youth exhibitors to learn about teamwork, competition, task completion, responsibility, and sportsmanship. And whereas the event is free to the public and is a wonderful opportunity for the community to see firsthand how the 4-H and FFA organizations make a positive difference in the lives of our youth, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim March 26th, 27th, and 28th, 2015 as Tarrant County Junior Livestock Show Days in Tarrant County. In witness thereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 24th day of March 2015.
I move for its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And just for the record, the sale begins at 1 o'clock Saturday in the swine barn at Will Rogers. So any of you that can come out and watch the kids. It's a good show. It's worth coming out to see. We have Cody May, representative of Crowley FFA, and Cherokee Zarate, representative of Westside 4-H, to accept this plaque. If you'd meet me at the podium.
This is another organization, which I didn't mention a few minutes ago and should have, that really affect young people's lives. And while Commissioner Johnson is going down to present the plaque, we also owe him a debt of thanks because he has been as strong an advocate of the Junior Livestock Show as anyone I have ever come across in the 18 years that I've been around here, and I know he's been doing this for a long time. He is committed to these youth and making sure that all of them get some recognition for the time and the effort that they spend. So in addition to recognizing this youth, we also need to recognize Commissioner Johnson for everything he's done in this regard.
Thank you, Judge.
You know, he pretty much way overpays for that, for all those lives.
Thank y'all for being here, and any comments you'd like to make, and I'll see you Saturday.
Yes, sir. I just want to thank Mr. Johnson and the rest of the Commissioners Court. It is an honor and a privilege to accept this proclamation on behalf of all Tarrant County FFAs. I'm a proud member of the FFA, and it's such an elite organization. I want to thank you. And once again, just thank you for your endless support and dedication to the Tarrant County Junior Livestock Show.
Now, which FFA chapter do you belong to, Cody?
Crowley FFA.
Crowley, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
We cover the entire county, and you are from, which is in precinct 4.
West Side 4-H.
Yes, all right.
I just want to thank you for your support, and please come out and join us for the Tarrant County Livestock Show and Youth Fair.
Now, what are y'all, do you have something showing, are you showing something this weekend?
Yes, goats.
Goats. How about you, Cody?
I have heifers, steers, cows, pigs, ag mechanics, and horticulture.
Oh, my goodness.
So are you going to make it to all of those things on the same day, or are you going to be...
It will be quite a long day, starting about 5 o'clock in the morning and ending at probably about 8 o'clock at night.
Thank you all again very, very much for
Well,
participating in that.
And Judge, I was not here for the 1950 show, however, I could have been. But this is my, I believe, the 37th that I have been involved.
Again, thank you very much for your involvement, because you have made a lot of youth happy, and as a result of all of the efforts that you go through each year tirelessly to raise the money that these kids then end up getting to enjoy.
Well, thank all of y'all and everybody else that participated in the support, because I couldn't do it without that support.
And if any of you haven't participated, Steve and Katie will both be glad to take your checks now, because the sale hasn't occurred yet. So, yeah. Court members, you have before you our consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. And before you come up there was one other thing that I was supposed to have done, and I'm sitting here looking right at it. I do want to recognize our own Commissioner Brooks this past weekend. He won the award for the Public Elected Official of the Year from the North Central Texas Fort Worth area organization for our chapter for social workers, National Association of Social Workers. This puts him in competition for the region and then the state's competition, and so congratulations, Commissioner Brooks. This was the award that he was presented, and so we're proud of you, and good luck as the competition goes forward from there.
I'd just like to thank the National Association of Social Workers for being a partner in all of the work that we do to better the lives of the people in Precinct 1, in Tarrant County.
Oh.
Thank you.
Mr. Manius, would you like to...
Take care of your own first.
Come on up, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, under the administrator's section, we have 3 additional items to bring to you this morning. The first one is the legislative policy statement in support of effective truancy reduction solutions. I believe that we sent out a draft and a revised draft yesterday for the court members. We've also included that in the packet this morning. Basically, it includes comments concerning best practices. It still moves towards minimizing the criminalization of truancy into our criminal courts process. And this item here is up for discussion, and if there is consensus on the court, we're going to ask that the court unanimously approve this resolution.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, on item number 2, this is a resolution in support of the North Texas Tollway Authority oversight. There was an article in the Star-Telegram this morning. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it dealt with action or consideration by the legislature to affect toll roads in Texas. One of the things that, as part of the overall legislative activity as relates to tolls, there has been some legislation proposed which would take local oversight of NTT away and place it at the state level. What we're recommending to the court is that the court pass this resolution unanimously, which would indicate the county's support for local oversight of NTTA.
Move approval.
Second. Please vote.
Unless they're going to take the responsibility for that billions of dollars worth of debt, tell them to keep their hands off of what we're doing.
Motion passes unanimously. That's exactly right. The other thing, in talking with Commissioner Vandergriff yesterday, in fact, we hear all the time about the amount of money that we need in order to take care of our roads in Texas, and the number that's being thrown out is $4 to $5 billion a year. What the commissioner is trying to say now to the legislature is that assumes that of that $5 billion, $1 to $2 billion goes for maintenance and goes for the oil and gas damage that is being done by those trucks. That the other $3 billion is something that it was expected to be leveraged, so that if they the state puts up $3 billion, that the private sector or that tolls would put up an additional $5 billion. That word is just now beginning to get out, but I don't think any of us enjoy paying tolls, but in order to be able to keep this area growing, we've either got to increase our revenue for transportation or our money to spend on transportation by somewhere in the neighborhood of another $5 to $10 billion a year needs to be what's going into it. And I hope that the legislature would have that appetite. I'm just not sure that I think they will.
Well, from a personal point of view, the Chisholm Trail Parkway cuts 20 to 25 minutes off of my trip from either my office or my home to downtown Fort Worth. I enjoy paying the toll, maybe a little strong, but I don't mind paying that toll to save that money and to save that gasoline cost, save that time.
Plus the improvements to the air quality.
Oh, yeah, that's just a great thing.
I think it's important that we stress the fact that NTTA was formed by the local entities in response to the lack of funding from the state level.
Yes, sir.
Had we waited for the state legislature to do something, we would be in deep, deep, deep trouble right now, from a traffic standpoint as an economic development standpoint, sure. Right? Without some sort of a toll solution, 360 South would have never been funded. And 360 has been around for 40 years. So,
like 60 years.
Right, a long, long time. So, the state legislature can basically point fingers at the toll system, but I think it's important that state legislature understands that the toll system is a response to the lack of funding for all transportation infrastructure from Austin itself.
Very true.
Well said.
Members of the court, if we could move to item 3. This concerns a tax abatement on Arlington Commons redevelopment project. Ms. McMillan is here to address the court at this time.
Judge, Commissioners, about a year ago, the City of Arlington and the developer, Bob Kimball, brought forth an exciting proposed project. Well, oh, there we go, okay. It's not moving very well.
Lisa, that thing hadn't changed since the last time you got it.
No, it's not.
Too aggressive.
There, you have to press it twice. Okay. We brought 14. That's my Aggie hard finger hitting it, I guess. So we brought forth a proposed project that would redevelop approximately 66 acres along East Lamar Boulevard. Throughout the past year, the staff and Commissioner Wynn and the staff from his office and our staff have worked with the developer and the City of Arlington to finalize the incentives and the project as we see it now.
Next slide.
Okay. The project, if I can go back a couple of slides. There we go. All right. The project includes the demolition and redevelopment of 4 substandard apartment complexes that exist now, along with improvements to Parkway Central and improvements to the Rockmore Elementary School. What is being proposed as the full project is construction of approximately 1,675 new high-end units that will be done in multi-phases in a mixed development. I'm having trouble. What we have before you today is Project 1A, which is the first part of that development. This is going crazy. I'm trying to go back to the dang map.
Lisa, if you'll just say which slide you
Okay, this one, right above the red oval, is the first project, 1A, of this development. Project 1A will provide for the construction of a 4-story, 353-unit complex with structured parking, on-site leasing, and residential amenities valued at approximately $37.6 million in investment. Then additional phases will be planned within 2 years of each phase coming on. So it'll be a total of 4 and possibly 5 projects phases that will be coming before you with, so that each phase will get a full 10-year tax abatement. Okay. This is a rendering of what the apartment complexes will look like in design. And as you can see in the forefront, the changes to Lamar Boulevard that the developer will work with the city on creating. The City of Arlington has approved a 10-year tax abatement of up to 90% for the project, in addition to a 380 agreement that provides...
So let me ask a question. Go back to that picture.
Okay.
So is it going to be 1 lane of traffic and 1 back lane and then parking, or what are we doing?
It'll be on both sides. And I'll let the developer talk to a little bit more about that in a moment. And I'll go over the specifics of the project, and then I'll have him come up and provide some more information.
That's a median.
So what the City of Arlington...
Back lane in there too.
The City of Arlington has approved for Phase 1A and is planning on doing for the other phases a 10-year tax abatement up to 90%. And then they're also providing through a 380 agreement assistance for demolition, environmental remediation, detention and drainage, and also those improvements along East Lamar and then to Parkway Central. The Tarrant County is being asked to simply provide 10-year tax abatement for each of the phases, this being the first phase, and a maximum of 70% from the county and 50% for the hospital district. Each phase will employ from 3 to 8 individuals in the areas of maintenance and leasing, with salaries ranging from $31,000 to $75,000. In 2012, Tarrant Appraisal District had the full value of all 4 complexes listed at only $12.1 million. And there was a total of only 716 units there. As you can tell, this project here, which calls for about 353 units, will have an investment of over $37 million simply for this first phase project. The estimated value of the 70% tax abatement from the county and the 50% from the hospital district is estimated to be approximately $1.1 million over the 10-year period, approximately $694,000 from the county and $427,000 from the hospital district. But during that same period, we'd be getting new county taxes of approximately $725,000. Now, we can go back to the picture, and I'll ask Bob Kimball, the developer, to come forward, and he kind of address some little more of the design and the issues that will be coming along with East Lamar re-improvement.
Lisa, are there any residents that are going to be displaced in this project?
Bob addressed that before, but I'll let him give you more information over the last year, what's been happening over the last year.
Sure. Bob Kimball, I appreciate being here. We talked a year ago about our process of what the relocation program would look like, and that's been completed successfully, I might add. There were about 350 families, Commissioner, that were living in the apartments, and so we put together a CARES program, what we call our CARES program, and we basically deferred rent, allowed people to not pay rent, to accumulate funds, to be able to make deposits. We were able to negotiate with apartments in the area, so people that wanted to stay in their school could. Fortunately, there was a rehab of another project that went on, and they were only about 70% leased. So we were able to negotiate fee waivers and some other things to help people that wanted to stay, and then we provided whatever assistance they needed in moving. So it went very smoothly. A lot of people just kind of disappeared. You know, some of them quit paying rent for a month or two, and then they just disappeared over time. So but that's been done. In fact, if you went out there today, we're probably 80% done with the asbestos abatement work and 60% done with the demolition work. So the site's almost back to a dirt state at this time.
Address for me, that's Lamar, which is currently a 3-lane in both directions or 2 lanes in both directions?
It's 2 lanes in both directions. This is Lamar Boulevard, basically over the entire project. Phase 1 sits on this end. For those of you who are familiar with the area, the Rolling Hills is here. The service road along I-30 comes in right at this intersection. So just to give you an idea of where we're at, in partnership with the city, we're putting cisterns in. We're collecting all of the water from the condensates on the units to put them in a cistern as well as stormwater, and we'll be irrigating the parklands. We'll be rebuilding the park infrastructure along Lamar. 1 lane will be turned into parking. We're going to leave both lanes in place in the eastbound direction. We'll have 1 lane in the westbound direction. The traffic studies support, because there's a lot of infrastructure that bypasses this area and runs concurrently with it, being able to do that. We're going to test that. We've agreed with the city that we'll try that, and if it's a problem, we have to reverse it, that we'll be able to do that. But the goal is to make this 1 lane. The park improvements are quite significant. Food trucks, a lot of pedestrian activity, and the idea is that maybe we can have our farmers market and close these down and bypass the traffic around at certain times when we have festival events. So
where's the westbound traffic going to go if it's not on Lamar?
The westbound traffic at this light can turn, and it can straight up to the access road and come all the way around the access road and back out here and bypass this and go to the light. Okay. Those facilities are already in, and they get very little traffic at really almost any point of the day. Of course, we would, the kind of festivals would be on the weekends. It wasn't something we would do during the work week. We've even explored the idea of maybe some contraflow lanes, so that we could take this 2-lane and make it 1 way each direction, and we're looking into that. We haven't finished that feasibility work, but it's a concept that the city floated. It successfully worked around the ballpark to do that, and so we're looking at that as an alternative as well.
On the eastbound side, is that going to be 2 automobile lanes?
Yes, sir. They're there now.
Okay.
Now we're going to rebuild, the street tree and the street furniture and all the street lights, and it gets a complete facelift from that perspective.
So the bike lane that's in this picture is going on the westbound side?
Well, there's probably a little bit of an artist, whether or not we can fit a bike lane and parking and all that in there without somebody getting hurt, we're going to have to figure that out. So when you open the door, if there's room enough for a bike lane outside of those doors opening is something that we've yet to complete that analysis.
In the westbound or in the eastbound or in both?
Oh, that would only be on the westbound side. The eastbound side, we're not planning on changing anything on that, other than adding street trees and improving the sidewalks. The infill redevelopment is important for our region. The Texas A&M Real Estate Center in October, in their Terra Grande publication, talked about, I thought did an excellent job on the mobility issues we're going to face in the region. And infill redevelopment, particularly quality housing, allows people to live back in close in again instead of constantly having to go out to the greenfield development. And the need for redevelopment and the growth and how it helps AV growth in the areas that are aging is important. So the kind of work we're doing, I think, actually also is another tool in your toolbox to address the kinds of issues you're having on the roadway infrastructure. The more housing we can get back in the inner city and downtowns and get people living closer in, closer to where the jobs are, we'll get grocery stores again back wherever the people go, and then office stuff will start to relocate back in the inner core and because people want to work where they live. So I think these kinds of projects have other impacts, and we hope to be the catalyst for certainly for North Arlington. They haven't had a new Class A multifamily project ever built in North Arlington. It's never happened.
What are you doing for Truancy? Are you working with the T? Are you talking to DART? Or are you considering that anybody that lives there might want to use some type of public transportation?
Yeah, the city has agreed to move the MAX stop that's currently over on Lincoln, over by Center Street in Lincoln, and move it over here by the hospital. Texas Health Resources corporate headquarters is across the street from this project. Yeah. And so they want to move that stop there to provide these folks an opportunity to hook in. The bigger answer in Arlington on that is that I think there's great momentum, as you know, at least now, for trying to figure out how to rail connect or rubber tire connect rail. On a Viridian project that you're familiar with, we're actually working with the Hatton Sumner Foundation, who owns the land right at Collins by the rail. We're letting them piggyback off our valley storage and our permits that are very hard to get, as you know, today, to allow a rail stop there eventually. And our hope is to preserve an opportunity for rail connection at Collins and that rail center feed our town center that will be there, as well as the entertainment district and the university up and down Collins. Now that's a private sector foundation solution to at least preserve that opportunity, and whether that can happen or not, obviously it's going to be more in your hands than the city of Arlington's hands. But we're going to work to preserve that opportunity.
That's good. When do you think this first phase will be completed?
Our goal would be to be under construction no later than the end of June. It'll take us 14 months to get our initial CO for the first part of it, and it'll take 24 months to complete it. So we may be ahead of schedule, and if we are, we'll come back. We may need to look at the dates, but our hope is that we've bid the project, and we're going through all the kind of final value engineering steps, and we'll be submitting for permit here in the next 30 to 45 days. So it's moving well. It's moving along really well.
So, Lisa, do you need some kind of action?
So today we're asking for the Commissioners Court to approve Tarrant County and Tarrant County Hospital District participation with the City of Arlington in abatement of ad valorem taxes on the eligible real property improvements made by Arlington Commons for construction of Phase 1A improvements for a period of 10 years at a maximum abatement of 70% for the Tarrant County and 50% for the hospital district. Included is an approval of a variance from Section 3H1 of our tax abatement policy, which requires a minimum of 25 jobs. This phase of the project will only include a minimum of 3 jobs, but in the entirety there will be well more than 25 jobs when all phases. So we have to ask for a variance from that section of our policy. And we're asking you to approve the resolution certifying Tarrant County's agreement to participate in tax abatement.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. One other question that just hit me. Are these condominium units or are these apartment units?
They're apartment units.
All apartments?
Yes.
So it won't, it will be a little bit of to the owner of the apartments. Is the developer going to actually own the apartments? And
yes, for the period. You want me to address that? Yes.
Yeah, because we got into one before where we had a unit.
These are not condo units that will be sold individually.
Yeah, we're in partnership with the Moritz family that put the initial capital, put all the capital, most all of it together for this. And the plan is to build it and stabilize it and then determine whether we would refinance it or sell it. It could potentially be sold, and we'd have to come to you and request assignments subject to being a quality developer as we go through and build each phase.
I think that we need to be sure that within our agreement, if there's ever an effort, if these units are ever condos, turned into condos and sold individually, the abatement does not go along with that.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem at all. There's no intent to ever do that, so that wouldn't impact our business strategy whatsoever. There's no plan to take them to condo, but I can understand the concern.
Let's just make real clear that our agreement doesn't trap us in that.
It states apartment complexes, not residential units, apartment complexes. And the ownership is strictly, it cannot be assigned unless approved by Commissioners Court to someone other than the
Please add the specific language that the judge
It's in there,
has asked.
the language is
We manage that through the Assignment Act that requires a Commissioner's Court vote. So anytime any of this changes hands, it needs to come back for the reassignment of the abatement.
But if there's any need to beef that up, you certainly have. Sure. We would support that.
I just don't want us in 3 or 4 or 5 years to be looking at a vote, and we can vote that says, no, we're not going to approve this, but something happens that ultimately allows those units to become condos.
The agreement does provide specifically that these have to be apartment complexes, and it is only for Arlington Commons or the Nehemiah group that's developing it. Should someone else purchase it, they will have to come back and ask for, now, individual...
Continuation of the abatement.
Yes, for continuation of the abatement. If it changes hands and you don't approve it, the abatement ceases.
Your Honor, we understand what you're saying, and we think we've got that covered.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Got a motion, a second, to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning, and thank you. We have 2 additional items. The second item, we're asking the court to approve the change, or a change rather, in the table of organization for purchasing. Purchasing is requesting the addition of a senior buyer position. This position would be in place to make sure that all of public health's purchasing needs are met. This is a grant-funded position if approved, so there will be no impact to the general fund. We are estimating that the annual impact if approved, will be approximately $78,000, including fringe benefits.
Grant position. It's a grant position.
Yes, sir.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our third and final item, we're asking the court to approve organizational changes for the Sheriff's Office and for the 396th District Court. This will seem eerily similar. We had a similar request before the court last week. Judge Gallagher is requesting that his bailiff be transferred from the Sheriff's Office. As the court is aware, the criminal courts are able to appoint up to 2 bailiffs to serve at their pleasure. There is no impact, of course, associated with this transfer.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vinny. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you doing?
Good.
Good morning, members of the court. Public Health has one item before you today for approval. We're requesting approval to submit a grant application to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This grant application is for enhancing syndromic surveillance capacity and practice. And if y'all recall, we've had a similar grant for about 4 years. First year was a sort of a proof of concept year, and for the last 3 years, we've been doing the work for syndromic surveillance. Tarrant County Public Health is a national leader at this point in the syndromic surveillance project and the capacity. We serve a 49-county region, At this point, we're looking at approximately 105 hospitals that we needed to bring on board, and we're about more than halfway through. About 65 hospitals are on board. And this next 3-year grant application will bring in, the ceiling is about $400,000. We expect to be funded between $300,000 to $350,000 to continue the project and complete that.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Beecham. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, what?
We have 3 items for consideration this morning. This is a North Carolina blue tie, too. It's kind of a tough weekend. Our women were knocked out by Baylor of the NCAA tournament Saturday. Our men.
How bad was that game Saturday?
Sir?
How bad was it?
It was only 9 points.
Huh?
Only 9.
Oh.
Is that how many you scored?
We're not.
I know, we lost too. So
Well, we're still kind of dancing because we danced on your baseball team a couple of times last week. But we have 3 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2015-070. It's our annual contract for fleet fuel card management services. Our recommendation would be to award the fuel man of DFW on a per markup differential to the Opus Register Thursday close.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2015-072. This is our annual contract for a coal milling machine with an operator and a helper. Recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, awarding to the 3 primary vendors as shown in the court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our last item is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2015-085. This is our annual contract for janitorial services. Our recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, awarding the Group 1 buildings to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in the court communique, as well as the Group 2 buildings with the same configuration.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Are there, Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have an interlocal agreement.
Yes, I do. I can get back to it.
City of Fort Worth, Carter Park Road.
Carter Park, yeah, I move approval of that interlocal agreement, whatever its number is.
8J1, A, and B.
That's it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus.
Yes, I have an interlocal agreement with the city of Haslett for repairs on a bridge in the city of Haslett. Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I have an interlocal with the city of Saginaw. Has this been approved by the DA's office? I'm assuming all of these have.
Yes. They've all been approved by the District Attorney's Office.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments? There being none, then you have before you, I'll bet, the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manus.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have several items for the court this morning. The first concerns the monthly update from the hospital district. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Manus.
Morning, Robert.
Thank you. I, too, want to thank you all for your support of the junior livestock, and particularly Commissioner Johnson for what he does. I was involved in various programs, and what it teaches younger people is the art of discipline. You don't want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go feed your cow, and you don't want to go deal with a pig when you get back from school and everything else. It really does teach kids an incredible amount of discipline. So A lot of times people think that's just an ag program, and it's just a program that kids do that aren't involved in agriculture and anything, but the truth on that deal is kids learn a lot from that, and I can see a huge value to our citizenry when they have those kind of ethics. So I compliment you, but also the effort that this county takes in fostering that effort, and I think it helps a lot.
Thank you, Robert.
You're more than welcome. One of the things that we did, we do not traditionally have a March board meeting. But at this board meeting, what we did is we broke it down, the chairman broke it down sort of in a workshop type session. And we have done these before. We have had them on our books. I know that Commissioner Wynn had one point said, we really want to look at your strategic plan and make sure that any of the discussions we have on initiatives and efforts revolve or relate to that strategic plan. And one of the things that we do, and we started this under Chairman Petty's initiative some years ago, is to start what we call destination metrics, looking out 3 years in advance and trying to figure out where you want to be 3 years from now. In healthcare today, 3 years is a stretch. Because things can change on the month in healthcare and what you're getting from reimbursements and how those things change at the federal level, state level. But we have established destination metrics. Those destination metrics are key areas that we want to aim towards by the year now. We've adjusted it to, obviously, 2018. And when 2018 comes, we'll add our next 3 years and keep going in that process. Those destination metrics then go down to a series of pillars. Those pillars have a variety of details. Under those pillars are your tactical approaches to making those things happen. Those destination metrics really break down into 9 major categories, and I will provide Mr. Manius a handout of this. This is the same handout that was provided to any of your staff that may have attended and also to all of your board appointees at the last board meeting. But they really focus on key areas of quality, service, people, academics, population health, and stewardship. And one of the things, and I'll just go over these 9 with you briefly to give you an idea from a standpoint of quality, we will be involved in the University Health System Consortium, that's UHC. The University Health System is a consortium of like hospitals. We have a comparative group of hospitals that have a level 1 trauma center that are a teaching facility and are relatively the same size. Oftentimes when you see reportable data on hospitals, they're all hospitals. And that can be unfortunately misleading at times, because if you have a 25-bed unit that only caters to one type of population, then your outcomes are going to be different than a facility that has high acuity levels or has a trauma center or a teaching facility. So what we've tried to do is look at this consortium of over 2,000 hospitals throughout the United States and find hospitals that are like to JPS. Those included in our comparable group are Cedars-Sinai, Mayo, Cleveland, some of the other leading institutions in the nation by which we as JPS can benchmark to. So we're asking in our destination metric is to take that consortium and those comparable groups and be awarded their leadership award. Leadership awards are given to those that have made great strides in their quality, their performance improvement, and the key metrics of the organization. So we have just joined that consortium, and we will work on working for that leadership award. And with that leadership award, we'll be happy to include for you all as commissioners what that requires. And we'll be happy to present that to you. We also look at quality and improving some of the HCAPs, which is basically healthcare providers and systems. That's a federal guideline by which you have to meet certain specific standards. We want to make sure that we, in the year 2018, are in the top 10 percentile. We currently find ourselves in the 48th percentile, and we want to move to the 10th percentile, move our way up to the top 10% in the nation of hospitals. We'll be working towards that, and again, we'll keep you up to date on all these. The other thing you want to think about is your employees, the engagement of the people. I know that you all are looking at your own survey and what folks think about the engagement of working for the county. We do the same thing at JPS. We have an employee engagement survey that we take, but we want to take that one step further, and we want to be recognized as the best place to work by Modern Healthcare. That's a national standard, a national benchmark for the best places to work, and we're aiming for that, and that's our goal in 2018 as well. Also, we want to take our residency program and trying to figure out how you monitor residency programs and achieve a metrics. The best way we thought to do that is how many pass their boards. Once they graduate from our residency program, we want to get to 100% passage, and we want to keep that up on a 3-year basis. That is indeed a stretch goal, but our numbers are pretty high right now of those that pass their boards. We're in the upper 90th percentile for those that pass their boards. We want to be in the 100th percentile. So that means if 1 or 2 do not pass their boards on their first attempt, then our numbers will reflect that. But our goal is to be a leading institution with our residency program as well. Also, we want to look at the mortality rates. I know this is near and dear to all your hearts. I know that many find it surprising that in all of your precincts and throughout the county we have a problem with infant mortality. Many of you have been leaders in that area. Many of you have fought hard for that issue. Commissioner Brooks and even Commissioner Brooks' family prior to this have been leading proponents for dealing with this issue. This is a tireless effort. You can say, well, numbers are the same, they keep staying the same. It's a tireless effort by all of us, and JPS knows it has a slice. But in the last year, we were able to reduce infant mortality for the patients that we see, and we will continue to work at that and continue to have a major reduction in infant mortality. We feel if we play our role, the great role that Catholic Charities play, the other institutions in town, Texas Health Resources, Baylor, and others, will make a difference in the county with infant mortality so that we are no longer a county that leads in that category. The other one is that we want to make sure that our primary clinics have met national standards, and we're in the top percentile for our primary clinics. If we don't provide the best primary care up front, we will constantly be coming to you or coming to the taxpayer saying we need to increase the amount of space and personnel that we have in our emergency room. We quite frankly don't see that as the best way, so we're going to monitor some key metrics. And that is how many people are being readmitted back to the emergency room that came from our clinic system. How many people are in our emergency room that don't have a primary care physician? How many are showing up with chronic diseases that have reportedly been taken care of in our primary care systems and are now still showing up to our emergency room? All these are measurable metrics that we'll be able to work with our doctors to help reduce. And then there is an award called the Foster Maga Award. Foster Maga recognizes key hospitals throughout the nation. We submitted our application last year. We were cited for one best practice, and that was our Shattered Dreams program, trying to help with trauma. And we were cited in their magazine for that. We did not receive the award last year, but our goal is by 2018 to receive that award. It is, I don't want to compare it to Ball Ridge, but it might help you a little bit to understand that that is an award specifically given to healthcare institutions. And we will work towards that. And then our financial margins in making sure that we are good stewards of the financial support that we get from this county, both from a tax and ad valorem standpoint, but also what we get from our paying patients. I plan to leave the destination metrics for you because this could be a 2-hour presentation, and I don't think it's fitting in this setting to have a 2-hour presentation. So I will provide these destination metrics, and on the back side, you'll see our pillars, and you'll see how we go from a destination metric to the actual approaches in a strategic plan to the actual tactics. And if you all want more information, we'll be happy to do that. This is a collaborative work. This was a lot of hard work by our board, a lot of hard work by staff to make this. It's been in place for a while, but we've updated, and I wanted to share that with you. So we'll have that.
I'd just like to point out, since it may not be clear from your presentation, that the achievement of these metrics, these recognitions, these awards, these rankings are directly tied to improved health care for the citizens of Tarrant County.
Yes, sir.
It's not just recognition for the sake of recognition. It's not just an attempt to get an award to justify somebody's ego or whatever.
Not at all.
It's about improving the quality of health care.
It's the journey of that that award. It's not the award so much, it's the process that you have to go through to achieve that award. And it goes very much to being able to have measurable metrics to see who's showing up in the emergency room that ultimately cares for those patients when we take a navigator out to their house and help them not only through our system, but to give them the primary care physicians they need. All of that is not the show of it, it's not the fluff of it, it's for the improvement of health care in our community. And we can stand firmly behind that. You'll find, and I feel very proud, you'll find a public hospital is very dedicated to doing that. And in our midst, we're going to have partners and collaborations. We'll have a lot more collaborations. I'm meeting with the officials at the University of Texas at Arlington and Dr. Karbahari. I believe we meet this week or next week to talk about collaborations with the engineering department that can meet these strategic plans. So it's an interesting effort. We'll be working with public health because a lot of those elements are the help and the assistance we're going to get from public health, from the patient bases they touch. And how many people come into public health who don't have a primary care doctor? And if we can link that and get those primary care doctors, and at the same time we're reducing the amount of time that people have to wait for an appointment, that's when you start seeing huge differences in healthcare delivery.
Absolutely.
Well, take one area, for example, infant mortality. I remember you talked about infant mortality about 4 years ago as being the #1 priority for the hospital district to go after. And I certainly understand that as one entity, we just cannot do it alone. We have to collaborate with public health, other hospitals, other entities, and so forth. But during the past 4 years, in my precinct I represent, 76010 and 76011 are the 2 zip codes that have the highest level of infant mortality in the county. And up to date, I don't have any update, but based on some of the numbers I have, I don't think the needle has moved much, and I have not received any updates or anything like that. So I'm wondering, when you set a goal out there, how are you going to measure the progress and be able to hold people that work underneath you to make those goals come true? How are you monitoring them and making sure that we actually are able to move the needle?
What we do, Commissioner, is we monitor those rates monthly. Now, it's hard to see a real movement on a monthly basis, but we do, and we present that to our board members on a monthly basis. Really, when you look at it quarterly, you begin to see that movement, and you begin to see it a lot when you look at it yearly. And I would feel certain that your court appointees are communicating those to you, but if they're not, we'll certainly try to adjust it to make sure that you're getting that information as well. But we share that with each individual board member and the public on a monthly basis. And the great luxury we have is your staff being there is hugely helpful because they see those infant mortality rates. And it is certainly a priority of ours. It's not the #1 priority because we have so many #1 priorities. You couldn't have a #1 priority at JPS, but it's certainly a main focus. So if you individually feel that you have not received those numbers, we'll certainly be happy to show you what you give your court appointees and certainly what your staff gets at our monthly meetings. We'll be happy to do that and happy to share those numbers.
Roy, we've probably been talking about the infant mortality for 10 years, and I think at least I, for one, at the beginning thought, well, this is an easy answer. And what we have learned is that the causes of infant mortality, it's not just, prenatal care. It's not, and it's one of those things where there's a big effort between United Way, between JPS, between primary care physicians, between schools, between public health, and it's very difficult to move that needle because it's so much is dependent upon a lot of things which are many times beyond our control and certainly beyond any one entity's control.
Let me speak to the second part of your question, which is how do you monitor individuals? The first thing we did is we provided an ownership model for staff members that are truly responsible for infant mortality. It is spread out for the action that we receive, but it really is the ownership of certain individuals within our organization. Ms. Pat Aldridge is about as good as you can get in dealing with the issues of infant mortality. That also happens to work really well when you have a chairman who happens to be a national spokesman for infant mortality, because that all relates back to what we're trying to do here. And he has spoken nationally about what the efforts of Tarrant County have been doing with some of the committees and the work and the effort. To the judge's comments, it does take a cooperative spirit from a lot of folks. We're lucky to have Catholic Charities and some of the groups that we have here in town that do a lot in trying to address infant mortality. And we'll be happy to. Our numbers for our patient base for infant mortality has shrunk in the last year at JPS. We feel very, very positive with that. With JPS's numbers being reduced, if all others start seeing reductions, we'll start seeing some big dents countywide in infant mortality. So we'll be happy to break down any of those numbers in addition to what we provide your appointees and your staff at the monthly meetings.
Is there a coalition that you know of that
There is.
formed to do this?
Yes, there
Who
is.
that coalition?
Pastor Emerson serves on that coalition. I believe they're called the Three...
Healthy moms,
Yeah.
healthy babies, healthy...
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
At the risk of prolonging this discussion, Commissioner Wynn spoke in terms of 4 years, Commissioner Judge Whitley in terms of 10. One of the first things I started working on when I came to Tarrant County in 1991 was infant mortality. And it has been a collaborative effort of this community since at least that time, and that's going on 25 years now. One of the things I want to point out is that, yes, there are improvements in JPS's numbers for its patient base when it comes to infant mortality. But those women who are in prenatal care and consistently get that prenatal care are going to have more successful birth outcomes than those who are not getting that prenatal care. So those who are in the system should be having good birth outcomes. It's those who are not in the system, those who are not getting prenatal care, those who have some co-occurring problems in their lives like drug and alcohol use, those women who were not healthy at the time that they got pregnant in the first place. Those are the key risk areas at this time, and JPS is doing its part in collaborating with other community organizations in dealing with this problem. But it's not something that JPS can do alone. It's not something that anybody can do alone. It takes the entire community. It takes all of the healthcare providers. It takes the social service agencies. It takes the faith community to work on these issues to make a continuous improvement in the numbers in Tarrant County. I could graph the curve for you over the last 25 years, and it looks something like this, headed down, but with peaks and valleys along the way. And until we get to a stable level, it's going to look like that.
I totally agree, and I agree with everything you said. And even we find, even with those that are coming in for prenatal care, we were not pleased with even our numbers. So even if they are receiving prenatal care.
Sometimes they don't come early enough.
Exactly. So we still put an emphasis behind it, and it always will be.
Consistently enough.
Yes, yes. Points are well taken. So I have provided that to Mr. Manis. I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate the interest in this. And as we look as to how strategically and destination metrics were focused at JPS.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Robert.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Members of the Court, we're going to item B, which is a presentation on the Tarrant County Cultural Education Facilities Finance Corp. And the Tarrant County Health Facilities Development Corp. Ask Mr. Dean to come forward. Also, Mr. Leatherberry is with him. I'd just like to say that the reason we have this today is because there was a desire by one or several court members to receive information as far as the workings of these corporations, and we've asked Mr. Dean to address those with the court at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Manius.
Ready before you start?
Yes, sir.
This is how it works. And let me show you how you do that. You just press it right there and take it.
Very good, thank you. Judge Whitley, members of the court, we appreciate the opportunity to present just some brief overview of the structure and the makeup of the Tarrant County Health Facilities Development Board and the Tarrant County Cultural Education Facilities Development Board. We often come before this commission with an agenda item seeking approval or some action upon a particular resolution. But in this case, we felt like it was a good opportunity to present to the commissioners a broader outline of the structure of the health facility and the cultural facilities and how they interact with the private hospitals in Tarrant County and the surrounding areas. And again, my name is Randall Dean, and I serve as the Secretary of the Board of Directors for both the health facilities and the cultural facilities Development Corporation. I also serve as issuer counsel for the board when applications are submitted for projects that are seeking either hospital revenue funding or retirement revenue funding under the Health and Safety Code. And along with me today is Mr. Jonathan Leatherberry with Bracewell Giuliani. And Mr. Leatherberry serves as bond counsel for Texas Health Resources and Methodist Hospital Systems, among many others. And Mr. Leatherberry can give the commissioners a broader perspective of the financing under the health facilities and the cultural education facilities. Understanding that I serve as issuer counsel representing the board, that's kind of a narrow piece of the broader picture, and I thought the commissioners may have some interest or some questions regarding that broader picture. Mr. Leatherberry is going to be available for questions at the end of my short presentation. We start with the enabling statute, and under the Health and Safety Code, both the health facilities and the cultural education facilities were authorized by statute. The cultural facilities came later. Cultural facilities is a broader base that allows essentially everything that the Health Facilities Act authorized, the Cultural Facility Act authorizes plus more. And the initial purpose of the Health Facilities Act that was passed back in 1981 was to create a corporation with the power to provide, expand, and improve health facilities that the corporation determines are needed to improve the adequacy, cost, and accessibility of health care, research, and education in the state. The cultural facilities, later in 2003, added to that not only the health, education, and general welfare of the people of the state in financing cultural and community facilities. The overall purpose is to promote and develop healthcare research, education for the public purposes of promoting the health and welfare of state citizens. And when we come to Commissioners Court for approval of a particular resolution, we always emphasize, and I want to start with this point here, that this is a private transaction between borrower and lender that sits with the county for a very brief moment when the bonds are issued, and then it goes to that private transaction. And importantly, neither the state nor the political subdivision, Tarrant County, is ever obligated to pay any of the obligations under the bond, either the interest or the principal on the bonds, and neither the credit nor the faith of the county is encumbered in any shape, form, or fashion to finance these projects. And this language appears on the face of each and every bond that is ultimately issued after these transactions. The Health Facilities Act, and therefore the Cultural Facilities Act, provides that the corporation's purpose can be accomplished both within the county and outside the limits of the sponsoring entity once a consent is provided by sponsoring entities. And the commissioners may recall when we've had facilities that are being financed both within Tarrant County and Dallas County and the surrounding counties, because everything is a system now. It's no longer simply a single county. We go and obtain consents of the surrounding counties, and it's always their elected representative, generally the county judge or sometimes the commissioners at large, that approve these consents and approve the use of funds in their particular jurisdiction. And at the end of each and every issue, all of the package is sent to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General passes on the acceptance of the proposal and ensures that all of the bond documents meet the requirements of the state of Texas. And this financing structure is a little bit different than many others that the commissioners may be familiar with, such as the Housing Finance Corporation, because the eligible members for financing under the cultural facilities is only nonprofit 501c3 entities. And that's a pretty significant distinction between the two. Tarrant County first approved the organization of health facilities back in '81 and the cultural facilities in 2003. The board is comprised of 7 members. The members serve as 2-year staggered terms, and the membership is the same for both the health facilities and the cultural facilities. And oftentimes we refer to a request for a consent, and the consent is necessary because of Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code, which provides that bonds, if they're going to be expended within a jurisdiction, that the highest elected representative of that district provide consent and approval. And going back to Commissioner Vandergriff, Judge Vandergriff always wanted the entire Commissioners Court to consider the resolutions and approve the resolutions, and Judge Whitley has followed that recommendation and that practice in the years since. And simply the resolution that our board passes and is presented to the Commissioners for consideration and subject to approval is only approving the issuance and sale of the bonds, and provides that Tarrant County is approving the bonds solely for the purpose of satisfying the IRS regulation that those funds may be expended within the county. And funds are limited for the use of construction, renovation, and equipping of health facilities, retirement facilities, and cultural facilities. And the uses are limited to those 3 categories. And some of the projects that the cultural facilities and health facilities have been a part of and helped to finance in the past involve Texas Health Resources, Baylor Scott and White Healthcare, which used to be Baylor All Saints, and now Baylor Scott and White is the system. Cook's Children's. Back in November of last year, this board or this Commissioners Court considered a resolution on the Trinity Terrace, a retirement community, and expansion of their facility. Methodist Health System has also been a borrower under the Cultural Facilities Act. The Adventist Health System, Euclid Hospital. The StateNet Museum Way is a retirement facility that has, within the last 2 or 3 years, come to our cultural facilities for financing. And finally, the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History are representative examples where financing has been utilized through this act, the Health Facilities and the Cultural Facilities Act. And with that, we'll be happy to entertain any questions or comments from the commissioners, either addressed to myself or Mr. Leatherberry.
I think this agency provides a great service in the state of Texas. My concern is about opportunities to participate in the business of this corporation by MWBE firms. For instance, I know that your firm has had the contract as bond counsel for at least 25 years that I know about. Do you use minority underwriting firms? Do you use minority financial advisory firms? Who gets to participate and who decides?
And Commissioner Brooks, if I could clarify, my firm serves as issuer counsel, so we have that limited relationship with the Health Facilities Board and are one piece of the larger puzzle. And I may let Mr. Leatherberry address the broader picture because he does actually serve as bond counsel. Issuer counsel, again, is the narrower field. Bond counsel is more involved with the cradle to grave, if you will, of the project with the different representatives that
Is there a financial advisory firm?
There's not a financial advisor firm for the cultural ed or for the health facilities.
So the bond counsel decides?
Well, no, bond counsel doesn't decide. Typically, the entity that is borrowing the money will determine who the participants are that are going to participate. So, for example, Methodist Hospitals of Dallas typically uses both a senior and a co-underwriter. Typically, that co-underwriter is an MWBE-owned facility or entity. Siebert, Branford, and Schenck has been used in the past, and in fact, their chairman of the board is
a former Siebert employee.
Right, exactly. So so typically what happens is the borrower will determine who is going to be participating in the underwriting, who the bond counsel is for that particular entity, the 501c3 entity, who the underwriters are going to be. Underwriters will then obviously determine their counsel, and then to the extent that there's other financial advisors involved in the transaction, whether they're not financial advisors for the county or for the Cultural Education or Health Facilities Development Corporation, they are financial advisors to the borrower. Typically, I've done many of these transactions both through Tarrant County and then through others. Typically, we don't see financial advisors for a conduit issuer because the role is so small. There's really not any role for a financial advisor for a conduit issuer. There's just nothing really there for them to do because there's no obligation of the county or the issuer to pay the debt associated with the particular transaction. It's all the debt of the borrower, not the debt of the county or the particular issuer.
So there is no overarching group that has the responsibility to assure equal opportunity to compete for the work that these issues generate.
Well, that's correct, except you'll recall that I believe one of the requirements that you set forth is the execution of a historically underutilized business letter that essentially had that the borrower executed a letter and expressed their intent that they do have, and in many instances they will in fact provide their policies with respect to using.
Yeah, but that's after the big deal has already been cut.
That's correct.
And
that's
that
correct.
pie has already been divided up.
That's correct.
I want somebody who has the responsibility to look at how the pie is cut up.
Sure.
The big pie.
Sure. Sure. With respect to the issuance of the bonds.
That's correct.
Sure.
That's
yes.
where the money
and that
is.
you could easily do that with respect to changing the bylaws of the corporation by requiring certain, participating and the participants to use a certain percentage of the historically underutilized businesses in connection with the issuance of the debt.
And this court did approve the bylaws in the original articles for this corporation, so that would be within the powers of.
That would have been well before well, maybe not before Commissioner Johnson was here.
Does that raise the cost of the transaction?
Typically, yes.
Typically, no. You're just splitting the money that's already on the table. You're not adding anything to it. That's the typical excuse for not doing it, is that it raises the cost. It doesn't raise the cost. It just divides it a different way.
Do you want me to respond to that? I mean,
Well, yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, typically, in my experience, when you have, if there's one bond counsel, whether it be a bond counsel like Gracewell Giuliani, Fulbright Jaworski, McCall Parkhurst, or Dan Settle's firm, you typically have one opinion fee. If there's co-bond counsel, two counsels, then typically the cost is not divided equally among. So if, for example, the transaction cost is $50,000 for bond counsel, it typically doesn't get cut $25,000 per firm. It will either go, it'll typically goes up because the bond counsel will, it may not go up double, but it would go up a percentage so that both firms are compensated for the time that they have to spend on the transaction, because it is difficult, especially like for bond counsel, maybe not for the underwriters, but for bond counsel or for underwriters counsel, it's hard to sort of split the documents that are required to be done. Whether it's the indenture or the loan agreement, or you can't say, here, you draft the indenture and we'll draft the loan agreement, because those sort of are documents that rely sort of on one on the other. You can't really do that. So I can see your point in some instances, especially with the underwriters, know that the underwriting fee would stay exactly the same. With respect to counsel, it may raise the cost. It won't raise it double, but it potentially could raise the cost. I can see that.
If one were to set a fee for bond counsel, and this is what we're going to pay for that, X amount of dollars, and put together a team to perform that function, then that does not mean that you have to pay X plus 1. It just means that people have to ratchet down their expectations and sit together and decide who's going to do what. It is not impractical for the indenture and the note to be drafted by two separate firms if those two separate firms have talked to each other and delineated the parameters.
I don't know how much paperwork is involved with that, Commissioner. I mean, I would say I know that within an audit we do, that there are instances where you bring in firms to help fill that requirement, but they're given specific areas in which they are to audit or given responsibility over which to audit, and there's a whole lot more documents. I'm not sure from a legal standpoint how many documents you're talking about.
Well, the structure of these transactions is a little bit different than the GO-type structure, and the way that firms or legal firms are paid is a little bit different. There's not like a cost per bond. Typically, your bond counsel.
Well, that's what I mean. Most of your transactions aren't, and maybe I've misunderstood this, but it was my understanding that the borrower comes to you with the lender already in tow and says, "Okay, draft the documents," but there's not an issuer cost or anything along that. That's already been. That's
correct, and all the fees are actually are paid by the borrower. They're not paid by the county, so they're privately paid by the entity that borrows the funds. They're costs that Texas Health Resources or Baylor Scott and White or Methodist Health System, they pay as a part of the cost of doing the transaction. They're not paid by the county or by any taxpayer fees or any other type of public arrangements.
Judge Whitley, you bring a point that when the transaction is received by the Cultural Facilities Corporation, the application is received and the team is essentially assembled 90% or more between the borrower, lender, trustees, bond counsel, and so forth. The corporation, Health Facilities and the Cultural Facilities Corporation receives that application and then reviews it to make sure that it meets the guidelines of the Act and so forth. So the team, I think that Commissioner Brooks was referring to, is assembled at that point by the time that it gets to the application stage when we receive it.
Now, if you did want to require.
These borrowers need to have some assistance in knowing what is proper in putting together their teams, so that they don't come up here and ask me to vote for something that I find to be offensive.
That's fair, absolutely. And if you wanted to spell out in the bylaws or the application process as to what the requirement would be, they could use those requirements in establishing the team before they're ever brought to borrower to bond. Yeah.
And these borrowers are, members of the community. I mean, we see the list: Texas Health Resources, Scott and White, Cook's Children. I mean, those are the borrowers that are essentially assembling the team and their financial folks.
Well, we do these bonds for a bunch of folk who are not even in this county. They're from all over the state.
Are there other entities similar to these that basically do the same thing?
There are, yes.
In the county?
Not in Tarrant County, no. But there are in Denton and Collin County.
And we see an awful lot of issues out of Bell County.
Yes, well, you probably won't anymore because of the Scott and White Baylor merger. So when I was bond counsel for Scott and White, we would always do the transaction through Tarrant County for just ease of use, really. But now that they're merged, Baylor, Scott, and White actually, I think, will be coming to the agenda, or will be on your agenda in the next several weeks for a large transaction.
There's a pending application with Baylor, Scott and White, and both Texas Health Resources.
So projects in Tarrant County could potentially go through the corporation in Denton County and get the same advantage, right?
Yes, sir. If that was available, and again, it's the election or the selection by the team that's been assembled, borrower, lender, and trustee, and so forth, that essentially makes that directive.
Do you know if those corporations have the same MWBE requirements that Commissioner Brooke is speaking to? Do you know?
Typically, they do not, they are generally set up by a law firm that wants to have sort of a captive issuer, so that on every transaction that goes through that particular issuer, they will be bond counsel or issuer's counsel or whatever it be. Typically, I don't see that. In some instances, I do. But not necessarily spelled out. Dallas County does not have one of these types of entities. They do have a Health Facilities Development Corporation, and Commissioner Price is very concerned also about MWBEs and the use of MWBEs, so those transactions typically have, and I believe a number of the transactions that come through Tarrant County have a significant portion of the underwriting syndicate being based out of, with an MWBE, although there are instances for sure where that's not the case. So to answer your question, Commissioner Wynn, yes, have I seen it before? No, but could it be done? Yes. It typically is not the case where you would have a certain requirement to have historically underutilized businesses to participate in the issuance of the debt for this type of transaction.
Now, I know we asked you to come today to talk about this. Why don't you speak a little bit to the status of the current board and what your needs are right now with regards to that current board?
Yes, sir. The commissioners are charged with appointing a 7-member board as a result of 2 recent resignations from the board due to health issues. We have 3 openings on this board, and we're asking the commissioners to consider filling those 3 vacancies, and we've submitted a list of proposed names to each of the commissioners for consideration of those vacancies.
Any other? Commissioner Johnson?
If we're ready to move on, I'll make a motion for 3 appointees. Mr. Alan Barron, Mrs. Toby Jackson, and Mrs. Rainey Chambers.
Yes, sir.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Anything else?
Thank you all.
Thank you, members.
I have not gone away.
Of course not, and we'll be happy to address maybe the changing of the bylaws, something like that. That's something well within the authority of the Commissioners Court. And again, we deal with a smaller piece of the pie, but once the team is assembled, we can maybe have an impact on that team.
Well, and I'm going to be interested.
Yes,
I'm going to be interested
Yes,
in knowing, if we're looking at that, historically, what have been, I mean, is this a problem, or are we providing a solution to a problem that doesn't exist? So I'd like to know, going back, whether or not, I mean, I have no question that THR, that Cooks, that Baylor and them are probably well within the structure, so I'm not looking to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
And that goes to my comment about the borrower and the lender essentially assembling the team and how that can be viewed.
The fact is that we're making assumptions about what these entities do. We don't know for sure. And for me, any closed system is a problem.
Understood.
Thank you, Randy.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Members of the court, if we can go to item C. This is the employment, or excuse me, the employee engagement survey. Ms. Worthy is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning, for
Good
just
morning.
a little while longer. I'm glad to be here today. We're really excited today to kick off our employee engagement and effectiveness study. We do have some representatives from the Hay Group here to talk to you about this. We have Paul Glogowski, who y'all are very familiar with, but he's not going to speak. He's going to stay in the background. And we have Katie Pileckia. Oh, I think I got it. Anyway.
Welcome to my
Yes. So I will turn this over to Katie now.
I think just down, right? Yep, perfect. Thank you. All right, well, thank you for having me here today. Here's the quick agenda. I'm going to keep this light and airy. Introduction to your project team, an overview of our methodology and our research framework. I'm going to talk about the survey process, address some confidentiality concerns, talk a little bit about reporting, and then open it up for some question and answers. All right, so here's the team. I'm Katie Pileckia, as Robin mentioned. I'm from our Philadelphia office headquarters. I'm a survey consultant in our Insight practice. Been a Hay Group for 4 years now. I have a long history in survey research. Before joining Hay Group, I worked as, at a political polling firm in Washington, D.C. And then you also have a couple other members of our team in the Philadelphia and Boston offices who are your support team. So one who is a project manager, and then somebody who's going to be processing your data and generating the reports for you. All right, so to move on to our framework, just to kind of give you an understanding of how we constructed your questionnaire, we have our engagement framework. And you can see here it's made up of really two big dimensions. You have engagement and you have enablement. The first concept I'm going to talk about is engagement. This is really the commitment towards the organization. So are employees proud to work for Tarrant County? Are they willing to recommend to friends and family? And how long are they going to stay as an employee at Tarrant County? The second piece to engagement is discretionary effort. And this is the willingness to go above and beyond. So you have that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Right. And the second piece to our framework is this concept called enablement. And this is the more tactical piece. This is whether employees are in optimized job roles. So are they in a role that is right for their skill sets? And the second piece is supportive environments. So do they have the right tools and technology? They have role clarity in their job. And when you combine these two together, you get employee effectiveness. And what does this mean? When you have high levels of employee effectiveness, you're going to see greater customer satisfaction. You're going to see your top talent being retained in the county. And you're also going to be able to attract top talent. And finally, you're going to have higher levels of employee performance. Now, to swing all the way back over to the left-hand side of the slide, there are certain drivers that relate to engagement and enablement in the county. So your questionnaire is made up of about 60 questions, and each of these questions fall into one of these drivers. The engagement are the high-level pieces of our methodology. So it's confidence in your leadership, respect and recognition for employees, clear and promising direction, and compensation and benefits. And the more tactical pieces are your enablement drivers, which are going to be your resources, training, performance management. All right. And so our research shows that when you have high levels of engagement, you're going to see employee performance increase by 10%. Employee retention, so you're going to have lower turnover numbers. It's going to decrease by 45%. And I won't read the rest of the numbers. You can take a look at it. But when you have high levels of engagement and enablement, you're going to see these business metrics increase even more significantly. So top one here, employee performance, it goes from 10% to an increase of 50%. So next, moving on to the employee survey process. So we're on the left-hand side in the pre-survey. This is typically around 6 to 8 weeks in length. During this time, we have project planning meetings. We're currently finishing up questionnaire design. We have survey communication strategies helping you construct the right invitations and reminder emails that are going to go out to Tarrant County employees. I'm working with Robin and her team on demographic selection to get you the right kinds of reports in the end. And today I'm here introducing you to our methodology and our framework. The next phase will be survey administration. This is typically 2 to 3 weeks in length. We're going to launch the survey, we're thinking mid to late April. It's going to be open to all full-time Tarrant County employees. They can take it on the web, or if they have access to a mobile phone, they can easily take it on there. We will give you response rates, and this will be broken down by demographics. And we also provide customer support. So if an employee has a question about confidentiality, or they want access to the survey, they lost their invitation, they can reach out to Hay Group, and we'll make sure that their questions are addressed. And the last phase on the right-hand side of the screen is post-survey, and this is the ongoing piece. So this is where we're going to process your data, we're going to deliver your demographic reports, and then we're going to work with you to come up with some summaries of the data and action planning prioritization. All right, here are a couple screenshots of what the online survey looks like. It's very easy to use. The questions, there's typically about 6 to 8 questions per page, and there's radio buttons across the screen where they're able to select their response option. There's a forward and next button they can use, and if they're not able to complete it in one sitting, they can come back and take it at a later time, and their responses are saved because everybody has a unique link that they will take the survey on. As I mentioned, it's open to all full-time Tarrant County employees, and we will be providing email support throughout the survey administration period. I do want to stress the importance of survey confidentiality. We take this very seriously at Hay Group, and our pledge to Tarrant County employees is that we will never, ever show their individual responses to anybody at Tarrant County. We take the data, we process it, and then we'll give it back to you in aggregate form. So you're going to receive demographic reports, and those numbers will not drop below 10. So you must have 10 respondents within a demographic group, whether that's department or tenure or age, to receive the breakdown of results. Next, on to reporting. So here's just a couple screenshots of what our reports look like. So you can see here we take the data from the survey and we create bar charts based on each survey question. So you'll be able to see your percent favorable, neutral, and unfavorable for each survey question, as well as you'll have internal and external benchmarks. So internal benchmark typically would be the overall Tarrant County results, and then we will work with you to select the best external Hay Group benchmark from our large database. Right now, you're going to receive one overall Tarrant County report, and then you'll receive up to 25 demographic reports. And this could be a combination of department age or tenure reports. And once again, if you don't have 10 or more respondents, we will not be able to generate that to protect the confidentiality of each and every Tarrant County employee. All right. Any questions for me?
Looking forward to getting it going.
So it's going to go out probably in about the next month? You figure it'll hit the
We
spring?
anticipate sometime in April. We don't have a definite date yet. We're working with Robin and her team on coming up with the best date.
Okay. Any other questions at this time?
How do we encourage our employees, especially on the lower end of our pay scale? Getting them to do this survey is going to be rather challenging. Can we sit them all down in a room and go through it, go through the survey, ensuring privacy?
Sure, yep.
To make sure that we get good response?
Yes, sir. We are going to work with IT, and we hope to be able to come out to some remote sites that might need that assistance and work with those departments in kind of giving them instructions on how to complete it and then giving them access to computers. And if they're not an individual that regularly signs on, help them get their passwords set up and that kind of thing. So we are well aware that there will be some departments that might need some additional assistance.
That's a standard practice throughout all types of organizations to have group administration. You typically see higher response rates when you give them that option.
And I would hope that the department heads, elected officials will begin now alerting their employees to the fact that this is going to be forthcoming and encourage them to fill out the survey, participate, and
That's
get that
incredibly
turned back.
important. Leadership buy-in and showing commitment to this project is really important. It's going to show that people take time to respond to the survey. You're going to take what they said seriously.
But what specific action are we planning to take?
Well, I need
the elected officials and the department heads to ensure their support of this survey.
Well, certainly, we hope that the court obviously is going to encourage that department heads are going to encourage their employees to participate. We do plan to do a mailer to the employee's home to announce it, a little postcard, and tell them to be looking for it. We plan to do emails to employees, and then we certainly want department heads and managers to present it in a positive light and encourage employees to participate. There will also be posters in break rooms and what have you. This Talk to Us that you see on the screen right now is going to be our branding, and so we're going to put posters in all the buildings as well.
Maybe we'll even have some inter-department or inter-group type competitions, or we take somebody to lunch, whoever has the highest percentage with employees over X amount, or
We're up for that.
something like that. So, I know we got a lot of folks out here. Any questions or comments from, if now's the time, if you got a question, come on up here, Ron. I thought you might have a question.
The tax office has been doing this for 3 years in the tax office. And we do it every April. This is going to happen, I guess, about the same time. So I would like the benefit of seeing the questions.
I don't think that's a...
There's no need in me asking questions and then this group also asking the same questions.
Robin has the question.
So.
Yes, sir. That request was made yesterday, and we will provide the questions to any department head that wants to see them. That's not an issue. And it may not be April. It might be early May before we do actually send this out. We've got a few things to iron out yet, but yes, we don't have a problem with that.
Super. So why don't you go ahead and let's at least get the questions out to anybody who wants them, but let's make sure that we at least get them to the,
We'll get them to the elected officials and department heads.
Good. Good idea. Thank
Prior
you.
to the survey going?
Constable?
Yeah.
That's not going to be limited to people with 10 or less employees.
No, everybody gets to do it, but you would not, for example, in my office, I've got, there's a total of 6 of us. I would not be able to request a report that just had my 6 folks.
But
And if
every employee in the county should do this.
That would be the hope.
But I mean,
Mr. Wilder.
this is kind of a county-wide questionnaire, and it's not going to, I mean, I'm assuming that there's not like a specific question on the county judge's department.
No, sir.
Okay. So,
I think that there's certain questions, as I remember, as I recall, as we addressed this earlier, or we talked about this earlier, there are certain questions that are concrete. They don't, y'all put them in there, they don't change. And then there's the ability for there to be certain questions that we could add or put in on our own from that standpoint. Tom?
Couple of questions. First of all, when I asked this morning if this was department-specific, perhaps I misunderstood. I thought you said it was department-specific. That you would generate results by department.
We can if it's a large enough department and we get enough participate.
Department has to.
I know. Now,
very interested in that. Do we need to talk to the newspaper people also?
I figured that was coming. However, are the elected officials going to have any input into these questions, or is it already a done deal?
Done deal.
I think what I'd say is you're fixing to get the list of questions, Tom. If there's something that, if there's a question in there that you object to, then let's talk about it. As it was said, it's not going out for at least a month. So there is some opportunities there from that standpoint. But it is not supposed to be, the questions are supposed to be questions that would be asked countywide. The reports and the results can be, and reports will be shown by departments. Again, as long as that department or office has at least 10 responses. Because what they've said is they believe that if there are less than 10 responses by any group, then the confidentiality of the individuals performing the surveys could be compromised, and we're not going to allow that to happen.
And we currently are being allowed 25 reports. So if we have departments above and beyond that, then we would have to purchase another package to get additional reports.
So I would suggest that as we emailing the list of questions to the elected officials and department heads, we said we're going to do that anyway, right?
Yes.
Why don't give them 3 days or something to provide feedback? So that way, I think it's important that we have the buy-in and the support of all the department heads and elected officials, because collectively, we may be able to make some positive difference. So you can't give them a whole 3 months, but maybe 3 days or something, so that it doesn't delay your schedule.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Other questions?
Great, thank you.
Anyone out there having any?
Thank you for your time.
You bet.
Your Honor, members of the court, we have one final item to bring to you on briefing.
Good presentation, Paul.
He didn't hear you.
He didn't hear me. Good presentation.
Thank you.
It's one of the best you've given.
We got to go now.
Thank y'all.
Court members, we have one additional item. That is item D, which is legislative issues. As in the past, we've provided you a memo from Mr. Mendez as it outlines some of the activities that are going on in Austin. Also, you have the federal update by Mr. Pike. And
he's here.
I saw the email earlier today about possibly doing this on a daily basis for at least a week or so. So what you'll be receiving on a daily basis is an update for at least 7 days, or a week, through Friday of this week, of update on federal legislative issues. We'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, is that it?
Yes, sir, that's all we have at this time.
Then we'll recess our open meeting to proceed to close to discuss items exempted under sections 551.071, 07 session. And there being no business at this time, we're all here. We're adjourned.